Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. I am your host, as always, Charles Hammaker. This is past few weeks have been weird in Seattle sports. A lot of Omicron variant issues kind of popping up in our sports. But with that being said, we've got some cool going on here. So if you don't know, Circling Seattle Sports is a podcast, started off kind of by me, but somebody here with me has been a big part of that as well. I have my friend over here with me, Omari Salisbury, not Big O, as you know, here on Converge Media.
I'm not nothing against being called Big O, But.
Well, I can't do that.
Oh, okay.
But good to have Omari here with me today. It's been a while. I mean, we do here and on shows on the podcast itself. So cool to actually have this as an in-person thing, to be able to do the show here. I mean,
I think it's our first time since the pilot.
That we did. Since the pilot that we recorded here. I'm excited to go through this because it's always cool to go through the Seattle sports as always, but to have a different insight and different pair of eyes and a brain to go over it with is something that I think should be cool to go through. So we're going to start as we usually do with our Seattle Seahawks here. Over the past week, played the Detroit Lions at home and won that game. We have a win to go over, winning that game 51-29, the third time in franchise history that the team has scored 50 points. The most recent one being in 2013 against the Buffalo Bills in Toronto on the road there. The team's most complete performance, I would say, of the season, leaving a nice feeling for Seahawks fans at that game, as it was the last home game of the year after really an incredibly frustrating season. On the offensive side of the ball, Russell Wilson seemed like a normal Russell Wilson. Had to wear a weird glove there because it was rainy, a little bit of wet conditions, but we're used to that here. Russell Wilson, 4 touchdown passes, got the ball to DK. Rashad Penny, I'll be the first to admit Rashad Penny is a guy that I was very critical of. Just had issues staying healthy, really couldn't, just had struggles, right? And I think I want to talk about this when we do end of the year for Seahawks, but Adrian Peterson has been instrumental, I think, in getting the most out of Rashad Penny since he's come to the Seahawks. And really since Adrian Peterson hasn't been playing. He's kind of been able to fill a sort of coaching role. And Rashad Penny even said he's been a great help to me, really good friend. I would love if he stuck around. And I don't know if AP thinks it's the end of the line, but if he does, I think it would be pretty helpful to have him as a running back coach.
Nah, I remember when we first heard the news that we were picking up Adrian Peterson. What was it, from the Titans or something?
Yeah, he spent time with the Titans because they had Derrick Henry out. Yes.
Yeah, I remember when we first heard the news, it was kind of like why do we keep on doing this? Why do we keep on picking up all these old guys? But I don't know. It's kind of been nice to see the veteran presence actually have a few good positive results for us this season. And now this is kind of something I feel like Rashad Penny needed. I feel like he needed that guidance, and I feel like whether we retain him as a running back coach or just still on the team or whatever, it's definitely been a good push for our young players.
And even with Rashad Penny, if AP decides to play another year or keep going, I know he said that this year hasn't gone the way he wanted it to. I think he was asked about that. He was asked about it, I believe, during the broadcast about coaching. He says, I haven't really thought about it, but hearing about Rashad Penny's words kind of makes me think maybe I've got some future there. So that's interesting to think about. And even Penny, I've kind of flipped my script. If this is the Rashad Penny that we get, I'd say you give him a year or 2 contract to say, hey, what do you have? Is this a fluke? We played the Texans, played a good game against the Rams. Well, no, played the Texans, played Detroit. Is this a fluke, right?
These aren't the best teams.
Yes, no, obviously.
These aren't.
So give him a year or 2, say, hey, let's see it. Let's stay healthy. Give me a year, see what happens, and then we'll go from there. I think we're in that position right now. Whether he wants to accept that or not is his own thing, especially considering that we declined his 5th-year option from his rookie contract. So
I think when it comes to thinking about trying to sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal, it's kind of we got to figure out what we're trying to do as an organization as a whole then. Because, there's talks about people saying it's your fire Pete Carroll or this whole like Russell Wilson situation. I figure we'll get into that later in the show, but it's just like we got to figure out the mindset that we're in, because I feel like us, not even just as an organization, but even us as a fan base, like we feel like we should be in a win now mindset, and I'm slowly starting to hit us that we might not be in that situation. We might have a great quarterback, but we might not be in the actual situation for us to push for a Super Bowl like how we think we are.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I mean, I feel like it's a domino effect here. Yeah, the big domino's got to fall first, and then we can see whether path we're going down, and we will get to that. So let's. I want to get through Lions game first. Pretty okay defensive performance. I mean, you give up 29 points to the Lions, and Tim Boyle, the backup quarterback,
right?
Jared Goff was in, but may be a little bit overshadowed by the injury that middle linebacker Bobby Wagner sustained, and we'll get to that in injury news. But as we go over to stat leaders here, Russell Wilson completed 20 of his 29 attempts for 236 yards and 4 touchdowns, obviously leading in the passing stat there. On the ground, Rashad Penny had 25 carries for 170 yards even and 2 touchdowns. I mean, 170 yards. Maybe I've just grown numb to it because we're not going to the playoffs this year. But 170 yards, that's a great performance.
No, that's a great performance by him.
And even I think the last few games he's had, against the Bears. He had like 135. Against Houston, he had like 150. Those are big numbers. And I mean, you know, looking back at it, I think Jonathan Taylor has 8 yards of 20 plus all season, and he's had 370 carries. Rashad Penny's had like 84, and he's got 6 carries of 20 plus yards.
I mean, also though, it's like it's hard to compare to someone like not even just Jonathan Taylor, but like the Colts offensive line.
Yeah, exactly.
Like look at what he has to work with, and like what we got to work with.
Yes,
so
absolutely
it speaks.
But he's had continued incredible performances. To wrap up stat leaders, receiving wise, DK Metcalf 6 receptions for 63 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Really getting DK involved and getting him to score. I mean, after a long drought of not being able to scored a touchdown in the game against the Bears, but that was really his only reception of the day. Tackles wise, with Bobby Wagner out, Jordan Brooks had 10 total tackles and 5 solo. Turnovers wise, some turnovers. DJ Reed had 2 interceptions and Ugo Amadi had 1. So switching over, offensive and defensive MVPs. This is the first time I have somebody to share offensive and defensive MVPs with. Omari. On the offensive side of the ball, at least for me, I thought it was kind of obvious. I took Rashad Penny. Do you have a differing opinion there? Or?
No, I gotta agree. Obviously, he definitely had a really big performance, but I also, you could also say Russ.
Yeah. I think that's got to be.
I think it was like what 20 for 29.
Yes, sir.
For 4 touchdowns.
4 touchdowns. That's. I mean, outside of maybe the Colts game, that's probably his best, and that was the first game of the year.
Yeah,
probably his best performance of the season, and really looked like Russell. Like I said, the Russell that we know. So yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for your running back or your quarterback there. I just felt 170, last game at home, pretty solid performance. And then on the defensive side of the ball, DJ Reed, I gave it to him. He had 2 interceptions. Coming off of the COVID list this week, Seahawks Seahawks corners did not have a pick in 2021, but in 2022, got 3 of them. So, defensive side of the ball, Jordan Brooks you could go with, led in tackles.
Yeah,
Bobby Wagner, we can't go with Bobby Wagner because he was out.
I would say Jordan Brooks, he really stepped up with the absence of Bobby Wagner. That's a big presence on the field to like fill in for. That's the thing though. That's like those are some. That's literally like a big gap to fill in for, when you have Bobby Wagner not on the field. So I feel like he definitely did a good showing and kind of shows that he was worth where he was. I'm still iffy if he was worth where he was drafted at for us, but he's definitely showing good progress.
Yeah, I mean, looking at where people are drafted is always kind of a tough thing, and if we go back and look in that draft, you could say, hey, maybe you could have taken him. But after initially being cautious, I've warmed up to that pick. I mean, I know a lot of people wanted Patrick Queen out of LSU, and maybe it's just because he was in the SEC. That's SEC, right?
LSU, yeah, it's SEC.
But I think he's filled out, and especially being under Bobby Wagner has been great for him. I'm sure having KJ Wright too would be nice.
It would be nice.
Overall, nice performance against the Lions. Really just kind of let it all hang out. The Seahawks did get down to the 1 yard line at the end of the game, but they decided to kneel it, which I don't know. I like more points, but that's fine.
Also though, I feel like that was our first real showing of D. Eskridge.
Yeah, he kind of had a tough year. I mean, being drafted where he was, people not really being too keen on that pick either. And then dealing with a concussion from the first game of the year that was, extended like 6 weeks, which is not good. And then not really being used as much as he potentially would. And how we thought we would see him in a Shane Waldron offense. He had a good year, a good week. And even to go back to the offensive play calling, we saw jet sweeps, we saw several wide receivers. Russell targeted 9 different receivers in this game. It looked more like the Shane Waldron offense that we kind of saw in week 1, but that we were teased with in the offseason. And a lot of misdirection, play action, rollouts, boots.
Because he got like 30 yards on that jet sweep?
Yeah, that was big.
That was nice.
And even Freddie Swain got involved. And he actually had 60 yards as well, but it was on 2 catches. So we'll get to it in a second. Let's get through injury news here. So DJ Reed was activated off of the COVID list, and Brian Monet was also. So kind of whittling down here, not as many players on COVID list, similar to when we played the Rams just a few weeks ago on the road in that game that had to be postponed to Tuesday. Adrian Peterson was placed on IR on the 29th as he's dealing with a back injury. As we get to game day inactives, kind of the usual group: quarterback Jacob Eason, running back Alex Collins, center Dakota Shepley, right tackle Brendan Shell, and defensive tackle Robert Nkemdiche were all inactive for the game against the Lions. And then post-game, this is where this all matters more than anything else. Bobby Wagner sprained his knee. He avoided major damage and will not need surgery, but it is highly doubtful that he will play against Arizona, just to err on the side of caution. Bobby Wagner, to this point, till that very first Detroit offensive possession, had played every single defensive snap for Seattle. And for somebody who's doing that in his 10th year, that's incredible to see. I know that there have been murmurs of people wanting to move on from Bobby Wagner, but I think that's kind of ludicrous. When you're dealing with a major sports team, you're going to get people who want to make rash decisions. So speaking of rash decisions, as we move over to team notes, so we've got kind of a saga. We addressed this last offseason, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the year. On Tuesday the 28th, Pete Carroll does not think that the Seahawks need to rebuild, indicating that he may be returning in 2022. All right, hold on to that for me. On the 30th, Russell Wilson says that I hope it's not my last game in Seattle, but at the same time, I know it won't be my last game in the NFL. States that he loves this city. Russell Wilson, if you don't know Russell Wilson, his connection to this city, they span way more than the football field. Seattle Children's and what he does there, Why Not You, the school he's got, right? Him and Sierra have really kind of dug themselves a foundation in the city. He's got part ownership of the Sounders. He's been heavily supportive of the NBA coming to Seattle again. It's not like Russell Wilson's just kind of been a rental here. He's stuck his he's got roots in this city, and I think there's more to it than I just want to leave. There's more to it than that.
We got to remember, though, like at the end of the day, his job is he's a professional athlete. A part of him likes to win.
Yep.
He plays this sport to win Super Bowls. And it's just like, he clearly loves Seattle. Russell Wilson does so much for Seattle. And to have that presence here, it really means a lot, especially because we don't have a lot of people like that, It really is just like when it comes to the sports world, it really is just like Russell Wilson in a way.
Yeah.
But it's like
there's not that many Russells around, really. He's kind of a really unique guy.
You got to respect, like, he wants to win. And it's like, it sucks for me to say. It's like, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that here.
And that goes back to what we talked about, the domino effect, right? It's really crucial to see what happens. Because, even last offseason, I think we talked about this on the podcast. It's really important that they get things right. Don't do that. So, even there's now more pressure because let's get to this. Because January 2nd, report came out from Adam Schefter that there is a league-wide feeling that the Seahawks coach and franchise quarterback will not be together again next season. On the 3rd, Russell Wilson reiterates that he wants to return to Seattle. Russell has 2 more years on his contract. And Pete Carroll spoke on hearing reports about Russ having a desire to play somewhere else, stating that, I don't mess with them. I don't have to. I know what's going on. I don't need to follow the agenda somebody has out there to try and create and stir stuff up. I've largely been on the side that if it comes down to the ultimatum of picking between Russ or Pete, that I'm going with Russ, right?
Yeah.
Because, Pete's getting up there in age. I mean, he still's got the energy he shows, on the sideline, and that's great and all. But, I mean, if you're thinking about it, right, if I'm in the GM chair, if I'm John Schneider, I'm like, hey, I've got this quarterback who's still shown that he can play. Obviously, he's played a little bit down this year dealing with an injury. I'm looking at it as he's got more upside than a guy who's, getting up there, getting near 80. And
Actually?
He's mid-70s. But he's getting up there. This is the point being, right? And I think I've got more of a lifespan for Russell Wilson than I do a Pete Carroll, right? And I get it. Pete Carroll has done a great job in investing in culture.
Pete Carroll's 70.
Oh, he's 70.
Yes.
Okay, but you get my point. He's the oldest coach in the NFL.
He just turned 70.
How old is Bill Belichick?
Bro, Bill Belichick's like 89, I swear.
Oh.
That's why we have computers, guys. Oh, what? Pete Carroll's older than Bill Belichick?
That's what I'm saying. He's the oldest coach in the NFL. So if
Bill
I'm
Belichick
looking at
rough.
it, right? If I'm looking at it, Russell Wilson to me has more value in terms of longevity as well than a Pete Carroll does. But seeing Shane Waldron really take over the offense in this game against the Lions, also the fact that they were playing the Lions probably helps that, right?
Yeah. That's why it's like you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's like, man, it's the Lions with their second string quarterback.
Yeah. A lot of guys, Jeff Okuda's not playing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to think about, and I think it's really crucial. It'll be an interesting situation, but we did get a question submitted to our forum from Andrew. Andrew asked if Russell Wilson staying with the Seahawks. Obviously, the national media loves to stir the pot about that, gets them clicks. Asked about what the local news is saying. I'll get your take on this as well, obviously, because I mean you live here, you're from here, right? And you've got opinions on this as well. But at least for me, I get it. Athletes a lot of the time before they leave for a different destination will say, "Oh, I love this place," right? I love, take it for you, for example. I love Chicago. I don't want to leave the Bears. When they get traded or they request a trade in the next week, right?
Because business is business.
Exactly. That's the point. Omari talking about, you want to win games. And I know it's a game and you get paid a good amount of money, but winning is always going to be a factor, right? Winning tends to get you more money as well. How I take it is that Russell's got his roots here for one. He's got this limited teams that he want to be traded for. And that's, if they want to go with that route, which I'm sure most teams would. But also what he's been saying over the past few weeks, the fact that he is currently under contract and that Seattle would have to agree to a deal, in addition to the fact that it seems that he's mended the fence with Pete Carroll after offseason. So at least from what I've got and the actual the legitimate facts that I have, the legitimate quotes that I have, right, I'm not going off of rumors that were made by some guy on Twitter. I've got Russell coming back next year. That's how I've got it. I'm just taking what I've actually know. And I get it. We could look at the situations until he again says that I've got these 4 teams that I'd like to go to, right? I'm going to go with that situation as of now. I'm saying that Russell will be back next year.
I would like for Russell Wilson to be back next year, without a doubt. I would love for that. Sadly, I keep on going on my Twitter feed, and I keep on seeing Russ in a Broncos jersey, and it's just so ugly.
I don't think he was even – I don't think
they weren't even on
Denver
his list.
put – yeah, so I don't know.
No one wants to live in Denver.
Does he even have an offensive line?
Yeah, and we got nothing good for him. You know what would be crazy? Russell to the Browns. Say, fuck Baker Mayfield.
I mean, that would fix their quarterback.
Yeah, that would fix their quarterback problem.
It depends on what they're sending back, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, this year wasn't the best year for him, but he still has immense value. I mean, if I'm another team in this league and I'm looking at the potential of trading for Russell Wilson, I've still probably given up a good amount. So it just
without a doubt
comes down to it. And again, I think what you said was really great. we've got other things to really. We have an off season that is like a big tangled up ball, and we really got to pull it aside and see what we're going to do with it, because we still got to go through Arizona, but there's a lot to look at here.
And I think playing against Arizona will be a real good test of like what potential we have with
play spoiler a little bit.
Yeah, because now we really get to see what not to say the Lions aren't like a good team, but like
they're not a good team.
They're not
the
best
second worst team in the league.
Yeah, so it's like you get a real showing, because it was nice to see 51 points on the board, but it's like it was the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
No, let me stop talking shit. Watch the Lions be good next year.
I mean, they play well for their coach. They feel like they have something with Dan Campbell. I mean, the players have bought into that culture, and when you get a new coach,
him as a coach. I like him as a coach.
You want to, exactly. If you want to play for a guy, it's not going to lead to a Super Bowl every time, but it's better than hearing about we hate this guy. Players don't want to play for him; they want out of here.
Man,
the Bears.
It could be worse.
We lost to the Bears. So, but with that being said, there's a lot to look at this offseason. And it's a lot on John Schneider and Jody Allen as well in ownership, right? There's a lot of decisions to be made, and seeing Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll back might not be the worst thing in the world next season, but it's certainly a puzzle that needs to be solved this offseason, because if you continue to put Band-Aids on a situation that needs a long-term fix, you're going to continue to be in this sort of limbo. So we want to touch a little bit on league news here. On Tuesday, December 28th, legendary coach, broadcaster, and video game creator John Madden passed away. As a Hall of Fame head coach, winning Super Bowl 11 with the Raiders, had a legendary career as a TV analyst, and created the still running franchise of Madden. So, I mean, for a lot of what, we do a little bit, in sports journalism, I mean, he had pretty big impact on that. I mean, playing Madden as well. But
I bought the new one the other day. It's okay.
Haven't gotten that one. But, I mean, really kind of revolutionized that, because players get money from that too.
Yeah, definitely changed the market for everybody.
Rest in peace to John Madden there. And then on Sunday, January 2nd, during their game, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Antonio Brown had an incident resulting in his release from Tampa Bay. We want to go through this because, you want all sides of it. You don't want to just say, Antonio Brown freaked out, right? Bruce Arians said that he tried to get Antonio Brown to go into the game against the Jets on Sunday. Brown reported that he was not healthy enough to enter the game, and
due to an ankle injury.
He
reported that he was trying to. So the situation goes that he was trying to tell them that he couldn't go into the game because he was suffering from an ankle injury, and he did not feel like he was fit to compete, and he didn't want to put himself at risk. As we know, Antonio Brown in the past few years has been battling with a bunch of injuries. But then on the other hand of things, Bruce Arians says he was not notified of him having to like an ankle injury. So it's just like kind of a whole like he said, she said situation now. And it's like y'all some grown ass men. Y'all some grown ass men going back and forth like this.
I mean, you brought up a good point before we started the show here. Let's get through I'm going to read through the whole thing. So after Brown refused to go into the game, Arians told Brown to leave. Brown would then take off his pads and his jersey, throw his undershirt and gloves into the stands at MetLife Stadium, and then run off the field and run into the tunnel. He ran into the tunnel in the field. He was doing skips as well.
Doesn't look like an ankle injury to me.
He was also almost mistaken as a fan by the on-field security and almost tackled before they realized that's Antonio Brown. Brown would get into a car with a New York social media influencer and then posted a song on his social media. After the game, Bruce Arians would confirm that Brown is no longer a Buccaneer. And then Tom Brady, his quarterback, would weigh in. Tom Brady famously let Antonio Brown stay with him at his house and has been an advocate for Brown, weighing in, preaching compassion and empathy for Brown. I mean, the way that you look at it, it's tough, right? Because it was certainly a bizarre situation if you're there and you don't have any background of it, context. I think at the end of the day, it's just important to make sure that Antonio Brown gets, the support that he needs, whatever help, because he's a father, right? I think he's got 2 kids.
Yeah.
So just making sure that, people do show some compassion towards him because I get it. You could just be, oh, Antonio Brown left the game, Lamau.
It's weird to me because it's like, even if he did tell you to leave, there's a certain way that you should carry yourself and handle yourself in a professional setting. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if your goal is to continue to play in the league, even after this incident with the Bucs, you shouldn't like skip off the field. You know, if anything, you could walk off the field. You know, you could do everything he did, but the fact that he skipped through the field and when he was leaving and stuff, it's like, bro, what are you doing? I'm a very big Antonio Brown fan. I've been messing with Antonio Brown since he was with the Steelers. I love Antonio Brown. He's one of my favorite wide receivers. And so it sucks to see him like this and know, like, bro, ain't nobody going to pick your ass up, bro. You a drama queen, like, through and through. And it's like, and plus the Bucs kind of needed him too because all the injuries they're dealing with. You know, they're already out Chris Godwin, and now they're out AB. You know, at the end of the day, he's still a great wide receiver, and it sucks to see like this is how he's gonna go out. You know, because he definitely was. You know, he was a good talent.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I'm sure you could potentially look at him for some sort of Hall of Fame candidacy.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was like, he definitely has Hall of Fame, like on paper.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Bro, on paper, yeah, he's definitely Hall of Fame. But like when you look at his behavior off the field, bro, ain't nobody putting you in the Hall of Fame. Like,
well, that's the thing. I mean, obviously they're not comparable situations, but I mean, if you look at like if you took Terrell Owens' stats and you put them on paper, lock. Chad Ochocinco, lock. But obviously, you don't just look at the paper. And at least in my book, if I'm a Hall of Fame voter, those two are in. Those two, easily. Right? I mean, those are such a huge influence on the game. I mean, at least for me, thinking growing up, I mean, you talk about Terrell Owens playing in the Super Bowl with a broken leg. I don't know how you do that, right? But yeah, I mean, that's obviously something that'll impact it. And whether or not we see Antonio Brown playing in the NFL again is in some jeopardy. So to wrap up our sort of longer football section here, the Seahawks sit at a 6-10 record. They are fourth in the NFC West. Their next matchup and final matchup of the season is Week 18, January 9th at the Arizona Cardinals with a 1:25 p.m. kickoff on Fox. Last game of the season, Arizona is still fighting for somewhat of a playoff seed and figuring out where they will be seated. So that'll be, like Omari said, this is a chance to really kind of
this will set momentum going into the offseason.
Yes, some talent evaluation, figure out where we're at, play some spoiler against Arizona because I don't know about you, but Arizona gets under my nerves a little bit.
I like Arizona. I like watching Arizona. I was kind of sad to see that Watt got injured earlier in the season.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, no, they really had Watt on their D-line, then he got injured. I'm rooting for Arizona to go to the playoffs. I'm a very avid Arizona Cardinals fan.
Terrible. Coming here with a White Sox hat and then
whoa, nobody knew that.
What hat?
Huh?
Exactly.
Mariners.
So we shoot into our Mariners here. The only news here as the MLB lockout continues is that third baseman Kyle Seager has retired. The 34-year-old third baseman spent his entire 11-year career with Seattle. Last year set career highs with 35 homers, 101 RBIs last season. So interesting to call it quits. I mean, it makes sense to me.
It makes sense.
You've got 3 kids now. You've got 2 girls and a son. Wanted to spend more time with his family. And with the uncertainty of the MLB lockout, we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when you're going to be able to communicate with players again for signings, as well as the market that Kyle Seager may have had. It makes sense to me. As if I'm being a selfish Mariners fan, having Kyle Seager spend his entire career with Seattle is okay with that. But
see, it makes me sad when I go on Twitter and everybody's like, "Wow, he spent all these seasons with the Mariners, never made it to a postseason." Yeah. Like, damn.
Just like Felix.
Just like Felix.
Felix spent some spring training with Atlanta and Baltimore, but I mean,
Bruh, they be ruthless. Baseball Twitter be so ruthless to us, man. It'd be breaking my heart.
Hey, we got some positive momentum going into next year. That positive momentum you talk about with Seattle going, hopefully finishing up. The Mariners have that. It's just about wanting to get the lockout finished so that we can make sure that happens on time. But overall, I mean, Kyle Seager, as long as I've been around, has been a consistent presence to be on the hot corner. Only winning 1 Gold Glove feels like a travesty. But always, I mean, I remember being there for that final game of the year and seeing that send off. You just knew that things were done. He wasn't coming back to Seattle. He's made that clear. And so a happy retirement to Kyle Seager and some time to spend with his kids. I believe he was asked about coaching, and that was a hard no. So Kyle Seager, done with baseball. Best third baseman in Mariners history. Do you have any thoughts on Kyle Seager?
Thank you. You gave us a lot, and it sucks to see you leave before you could even like truly accomplish anything with the team. But it sounds like that's a lot going on with the Mariners right now. So we'll see.
And great beat writer for the Mariners, Ryan Divish, put out a story that Kyle Seager knew he was going to retire. Apparently, that's why he was very upset at the trade deadline when the Mariners didn't make bigger moves, because he really wanted this year to be the year to get in and really top things off. So that certainly sucks, but I hope that when the organization does get to that spot, and it should be this season, that they've got like a suite, right, of all the Mariners who never got to make it in, and there's they have them there, right? So that is all we've got for Mariners news, as it continues to be the MLB lockout, and both the Players Association and the league owners have still not discussed any major issues at this point of January 3rd. I know we're really early into the year, but I'd like to get the lockout over with. The Sounders have a little bit of news here. The Concacaf Champions League round of 16 legs 1 and 2 were officially announced for the Sounders. They will play these 2 games before starting off the regular season. Leg 1 will be February 17th with a 7 p.m. kickoff in Seattle, and leg 2 will be February 24th with a 7:30 p.m. kickoff in Managua. So Champions League, always prestigious to play with clubs around the world. Interesting to see how Seattle performs on that platform. And then, so the bigger news here, more important, the team is reportedly linked to midfielder and former Real Salt Lake player Albert Rusnak. If you are not familiar, the Real Salt Lake eliminated the Sounders from the playoffs this past season. There's some discussion about a signing there's some discussion about it taking place, but there's not an official deal done. The last report that I was told about is that the Sounders are they have an offer on the table. They're just waiting for Rusnak to react to it. Rusnak is a 27-year-old former Real Salt Lake captain. He joined the MLS in 2017, and since then has scored 41 goals and 39 assists in that time, and would really be a big contributor in the midfield. I mean, Seattle didn't really get to see Nico Ladero play last season due to injury. You dealt with a lot of injuries last year anyway. So I feel like adding somebody who was an all-star last year, had 12 goals and 12 assists, there's a lot of potential there to really continue to bolster the midfield and continue to be a juggernaut in the MLS. So that's being talked about. There's nothing official on that yet, but that is certainly something to keep an eye on, and we will keep tabs on that as well. As it's really interesting to me, right? If we look at like NBA free agency, NFL free agency, MLB free agency, we know a lot more about that, right? We hear about, Seattle's talking to this guy. MLS, in soccer in general, we really don't get that kind of coverage, at least not here. Maybe across the pond or whatever, in La Liga and Barcelona. So there's talk about transfers and all that, but like MLS, it's much more like we kind of hear about it after it happens or maybe right before. So things to keep an eye on. Currently, Seattle has 5 free agents. Will Bruin is out of contract. Stephen Cleveland is out of a contract. And then Jordy Dellum, Freddie Montero, and Killen Rowe all have a team option, and some of those have already been picked up. So we move on from that, as the Sounders, still relatively no news there. The Storm, nothing going on there. We move on to our Seattle Kraken, our NHL hockey team. Over the past week, played 3 games, two of them against Pacific Division opponents. The first game being December 29th versus the Philadelphia Flyers, losing that game 3-2. Player of the game being defenseman Jeremy Lauzon with 1 goal, 1 point, a 1+-, 3 shots on goal, and 1 hit. December 30th versus the Calgary Flames, losing that game 6-4 in Captain Mark Giordano's first game against his former team. Giordano would be the player of the game for that game, actually, recording 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points, a 1+-, 2 shots on goal, 3 hits, and 2 blocks. Really filling up the stat sheet there for somebody who's 38. January 1st versus the Vancouver Canucks, losing that game 5-2. Player of the game would be Callie Yarncroc with 1 goal, 1 point, 2 shots on goal, and 1 block. So Seattle's currently on a 5-game losing streak.
Yeah.
We're kind of back still in a situation where the team has a lot of defensive lapses. And somebody made a good point on Twitter. Twitter's good for something sometimes. Twitter's a very interesting space.
It's not the Manners.
No.
Not
somebody brought up the point that expansion teams tend to have little mistakes that guys create because they don't know each other that well, right? I mean, if you look at teams that are successful around all sports, I mean, you look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs have kind of built that up where they, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce,
Tyreek
Hill,
they've
kind of gelled. Yeah, Andy Reid, they've gelled that, right? I mean, chemistry is not always talked about enough. Where, I mean, you look at some teams that are like supposed to be super teams, they don't always work because they don't gel together, right? I mean, if you look at Golden State now, as much as I haven't been a fan of Golden State, just because I rooted for somebody specifically.
Ooh, Golden State's fire right now.
Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. I mean, those guys were all acquired via the draft, right?
And then their young pool's good.
Their young pool.
You got Gary Payton.
And so their work.
Gary Payton the second.
Which is crazy to me because I remember he went to Oregon State.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're looking at this, you know what I'm saying, right? These good teams, these teams that are consistent year in and year out, they have cores that they hold on to and they have chemistry. What is Seattle lacking?
We don't have that yet. I think
exactly.
We feel like we all got kind of a little bit excited and kind of jumped the gun, especially because you hear the hype around Vegas after their expansion draft.
Yep.
And so, we were kind of all like, oh yeah, we're going to be nice. Like first year in, and it's like, no, at the end of the day, team chemistry is important, and we're still like, yeah, no.
So that's a good point, and that's had to be reiterated. I mean, everybody looks at the Vegas situation and they think, oh yeah, we're gonna go out, we're gonna make it straight to the Stanley Cup. Totally different thing. I mean, the NHL hadn't had an expansion draft in years, so nobody knew how to prepare for it. I mean, the team that they picked their goaltender off of, who was a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, that team had 2 of them on their roster. It's hard to happen, and you've got to expose one of them. So, I mean, Vegas had such great circumstances for that, and they really fit into that. And now they're one of the teams that they do have chemistry. They've locked that up, and it's just a totally different situation. But, I mean, really, as someone who writes on these games, it kind of gets frustrating because it's the same stuff each night in and each night out. It's these offensive lapses, but there's like a variety pack that I can pick from of what's going on. Whether last game against Vancouver, it was turnovers behind the net. You can't turn over the puck right around your own net, right? Against the Flames, it was giving up response goals. You go up and get a goal, right? And you give one up 40 seconds after you've scored. Response stuff like that cannot happen. And it's just these continued issues that we're going to see with an expansion team. I get that. I know it's frustrating. Me and you both like winning, right? I don't think either of us enjoys losing things. So I get that. I get the frustration.
It just feels like such a culture thing at this point. There's a culture of Seattle. Like, damn, we just lose. Minus the Storm. Thank you.
Well, the Sounders have made the playoffs every year. They've been in the MLS. The Seahawks under 500 right now. I would use other words, but the Mariners, obviously, that history of not making the playoffs. I'm making the playoffs since I was 4 months old. I get that. The Seahawks had a good run, of making the playoffs, having winning seasons. It's just about Adam Larson, defenseman Adam Larson said this in a post-game press conference. He said that it's how this group responds to this adversity, and he says that we're going to come out of it better. It's just about when that response comes, and I don't know when that'll be.
I think this is still a good start because me not being a big hockey guy, I had very low expectations from an expansion team. I'm just like, okay, we got a team. This is cool. This is more just sports in Seattle. Always can be happy about that. Yep. And it's just like, all right, at the end of the day, these guys are all professional in their sports, and they're all good players because, it was an expansion draft. We all drafted players that they thought we were good.
Mm-hmm. These are all because there's a bunch of lines in hockey, right? Because they switch out players. It's like rotations. These are like a bunch of second line. Those are not bad guys. They're not like bottom of the bin. Pick them out of nowhere. these are second and third line guys. They're not bad at all.
So
they're good. They're good caliber players.
I'm excited to see how we come out playing next season. Like I'm gonna be a little bit more concerned if this is like a problem we had like 2-3 seasons in.
There you go. Exactly.
It's only season 1,
and that's the thing too. Is Seattle has a good amount of cap space for this upcoming free agency. So
I gotta do some research.
Slash a little bit in there.
What's a good amount of cap space in hockey?
I just know that from what I've been told is that we've got a good amount of cap space and that we could be players there. It's just about how you use that, right? Because it doesn't mean anything if you've got the funds if you pay for low quality items. So that will be something to note. But I think you make a good point. If we're in this situation in year 3, year 4, maybe, then I'm concerned. Then it's really like, okay, was Dave Haxtell the right pick and coach? Did you make the right picks in the draft? Did you sign the right players in the offseason? That's when it comes into play. In injury news, which is never the best part of the show, on Monday, December 27th, it was announced that forward Brandon Tanev has suffered a season-ending ACL injury. He recently had successful surgery and has already begun rehabbing with Kraken trainers. So that's a good sign, working on the road to rehab. But the Kraken lose a fan favorite and a forward there for the season, as well as on the 27th, Mason Appleton was placed on the COVID-19 protocol list. On January 1st, the day of the Vancouver game, defenseman Jeremy Lauzon was placed on the COVID list prior to that game, obviously making him unavailable for that game. And then January 3rd, center Alex Wenberg was placed on the COVID-19 list. And the Kraken did have a full practice, and the only players missing were Wenberg, who's on the COVID list, and Jaden Schwartz. Yes, thank you. Good. And Appleton, who was on the COVID list, and Jaden Schwartz, who's dealing with an upper body injury. So a full practice there really gives you a chance to.
COVID's making sports more interesting. I will say that. It's going to be weird when COVID's not a problem, because if you look at this whole just professional sports, like wide NBA, NHL, everything, a lot of players be out because of COVID nowadays. And it's like you really got to have depth on your team, and it kind of adds like a whole different variable because, you're dealing with professional athletes and they're like their mid-20s. They going out to the club, they flexing, they doing all this. Like they're not being safe.
No.
So it's just crazy to see this is such a big factor. It's gonna be weird. Hopefully 2-3 years was not an issue.
And you bring up a good point. Watching the Sunday Night Football game, they talked about that. It's like this makes the playoffs a little bit more interesting. Making a Super Bowl run. I don't know. What if the Chiefs get a strain after their? I don't know if they'll lock up the 1 seed, but what if the Chiefs, they get hit by it?
Yeah.
Who's your favorite in the AFC? It's just what if the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, take him out of the NFC Championship game? Jordan Love, what happens? So that brings up a good point. And I mean, it brings a question. If you could give me some short idea, I mean, are we going to be dealing with this next season?
It's
if we look at it like summer and beyond, because I mean, early season, in the beginning of 2022, still dealing with it. I mean, if we somehow make some miraculous push over the summer, get people vaccinated, get boosters out there, I mean, are we still looking at this as a problem in the fall, the winter? I mean, I don't know if we're out of the woods yet.
I don't know. I feel like it's been an interesting problem. It's nice to see NBA teams really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
10-day contracts.
Yeah, just the hoop.
Don't know how Jamal Crawford hasn't been brought back yet, but
we'll see. I don't know. I keep on seeing people talking about that.
I mean, Lance Stevenson's back. So, but yeah, I mean, it brings up a good point, and I'd like to not deal with it, but it does make things interesting, certainly. And it's a good point you said that, because as we get to team news here, the NHL reintroduced the taxi squad. It allows a reserve squad of up to 6 players to be on hand due to the rise of COVID cases. And so far, the Kraken have brought up goaltender Joey Daccord and forward Cole Lind to that taxi squad. On December 30th, the team recalled Cole Lind from the taxi squad for the game against Calgary. And the team placed for Jaden Schwartz on its day-to-day list with an upper body injury that he's still dealing with here on the 3rd. So we have postponements again. I know we've had some postponements of Kraken games. I mean, really for the past few weeks. The NHL postponed the January 4th game of the Islanders against the Kraken, and then the January 6th game of the Senators and the Kraken. So Seattle now has 7 games to reschedule. Most likely all of them will be placed in February, as the NHL will not have players in the Olympics. So that schedule of only having 2 games in February will change, as I'm sure they'll put all 7 of those games in February. So with that being said, as we look ahead here, this graphic is outdated. As we look here, the Kraken record sits at 10 wins, 17 losses, 3 overtime losses, resulting in 23 points. 10 times 2 brings you to 20. 3 times 1 brings you to 23. They sit at 8th in the Pacific Division still, and their only matchup looking ahead, as you can avoid that Ottawa matchup, is January 10th at the Colorado Avalanche with a 6 p.m. puck drop. So looking at it, there's no rain news to go over, so that's the show we've got for you. It was cool to have Omari on.
Omari,
I didn't mean to say that. I did not mean for that to go out how that did.
It's okay, man. All right.
We've got our Seahawks beating up on the Lions. Some discussion about Russell Wilson, and as Omari really hit on, the domino effect that they might have on the team. The Mariners, Kyle Seager announcing his retirement as the MLB lockout continues to run through. The Sounders looking at potentially adding midfielder Albert Rusnak, as well as dealing with their own free agents. The Storm remaining quiet. The Kraken losing their last 3 games, currently on a 5-game losing streak, having some games postponed and dealing with injuries, and the Reign having a quiet week. So, I mean, do you have any reflection on this past week?
I don't know. I feel like our sports situation kind of represents like Seattle as a whole. You know, Seattle as a city's on the come up. Our sports teams are on the come up.
There's a lot of positives to look at.
Yeah,
you've got an NHL team for one.
Yeah,
the
we
Mariners
got an team.
Played well over expectation.
Are we eliminated from playoffs?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So if they make some miraculous, well, that's the thing is like 3-4 teams from each division make it. Oh, okay. So we have an outside chance.
And we're 8th. I don't know if the Dolphins went on a 7-game win streak. I got more faith in the Krakens.
There you go.
I got more faith in the Krakens.
The Sounders have made the playoffs every year that they have been in existence, and they're looking at adding an all-star caliber player. The Storm have won 4 titles, but they have a big offseason to deal with still. The Reign were 2nd seed in the NWSL last year. The Seahawks, that's kind of murky water right there.
Murky water.
But overall, I can't disagree with you on that. Would you like to do the outro today, Omari?
What is that? I will be back next week.
Before anything else, again, have to thank my director, Salman, behind the camera, having to set up a bunch of cameras here as we've got Omari here. Got our wide angle, got our individual angles. So always thank your directors, because for the most part, I sit behind the camera and I talk. It's what I do here. I know that we had a kind of a rough patch of snow and ice. Luckily, that's kind of been watered down thanks to the rain here. So
it's snowing right now.
Yeah, but it's getting better. So hope everyone is able to stay safe over the cold there. It's still cold, but dealing with less ice, hopefully, and hopefully we can get that out. So it's just the rain again that you're so used to. Until we see you back next week, I am your host, Charles Hammaker, with
co-host Omari Salisbury.
Take care of yourself. Be safe out there, and root for your Stella sports teams. I'll see you next week.